this terrible situation that those of us who know what's going on have no mechanism by which to reach the people. Because A, we're denied access to the instruments of discussion, and secondly, we're demonized. So these poor people who are going to suffer as a result of this, and their children's lives are going to be destroyed, will not hear us because we're deemed to be far right or whatever it is. This is shocking, because I know the day will come when they will realize that they were misled and that they might have saved themselves. They might have saved their children's happiness and hopes. But that moment was lost because they didn't hear a correct description of what was happening at the right time. They keep people in line. You know, it's like when you have to herd a flock of sheep down a road and into a gate. You've got to have somebody standing just beyond the gate to turn them in. And that's basically what you have. You have the chief shepherd and the proxies who keep everybody in line. And then we're headed towards the gate to hell.
You know, on the world stage, we're like a child with a whole load of adults, you know, who have hundreds of years of history behind them and world wars and colonizations and all sorts of stories, like, you know. We were a fledgling state in 1936. You know, we haven't had a chance. Even then, all our social functions were given over to the church. So we really haven't had a chance to flex our own administrative governance at all. And because of that, what would a whole load of cutthroat adults maybe do with a kind of a vulnerable teenager in their mix? They take advantage. We've been taken advantage of. And because we're such a beautiful country and such a wonderful resource, then, you know, we opened the doors and let America in and took advantage, and we don't value ourselves either. Like any insecure teenager, we don't value what we have. We have no sense of developed self-worth yet. So we're extremely immature as a nation state. We are a very vulnerable teenager, wants to fit in, wants to look progressive, wants to kind of shake off the Catholic family upbringing that she had, doesn't want her cool friends to know about it. If you could imagine like how a teenager might act, that's exactly how we're behaving, you know? Instead of asserting like a woman would, you know, asserting, going, I don't know, that goes against my intuition, goes against my feeling, I'm not going to do that, let you go off. I'm going to say no, like, I'm going to assert my own sense of self and identity, you know, and I'm going to see my own self-worth and say, actually, do you know what, I'm not going to allow you in here to pollute my rivers because my rivers are worth more than your investment. You know, but in Ireland, they opened the doors to pharmaceutical and chemical industries here. Our EPA is an international joke. Nowhere in the world would they allow an aluminium refinery on the biggest water course in the country. I mean, that doesn't even happen. Refineries are usually beside the mine. But why did they come to Ireland? Because it was the only EPA in the world that would allow them in, that has decimated the entire estuary, like, you know. It's an environmental Armageddon down there waiting to happen. But this kind of thing, because not valuing what we had, not valuing what we have, and just instead succumbing to peer pressure and succumbing and wanting to be perceived as progressive, and so sad.
My opinion is that it noises you in a way that you could not even begin to imagine. And it's particularly insidious here in Ireland because people are encouraged to call politicians by their first names and still do. That spell, that black magic weapon, has worked so well in this country that even people, when they hate a politician or being insulted by them, will still call them by their first name. They're not our mates, they're not our friends, they're here to destroy us on behalf of the globalists. You have to get that into your head. These are vassal enforcement agencies. It's not just Ireland, it's everywhere, running your country on behalf of unelected globalist transnational bodies. People say to themselves, I get up every morning and it seems like the government only exists to make my life harder. Correct. When was the last time you switched on the evening news and you heard a politician talk about we're going to improve the quality of life for ordinary people? Mediocrity is the fertilizer of tyranny. You could not have political parties or political people involved in politics who were any way dynamic or free thinking because they would not enforce these punitive measures upon us, such as vaccine passes. Don't think that they're idiots. Don't think, oh, we'll vote these gobshites out and get the... No. The next crowd have the same detestable, psychopathic, visceral hatred of you And that's why they're in the jobs they were in. If they liked you and cared about you, they wouldn't be selected for government. This is why governments all over the West are filled with mediocre, elitist caste, this quasi-sentient caste, I call them, of people from politically connected families, families with money interests. And they're probably not bright enough to actually run the family business, but they're smart enough to carry out the orders given to them in a press release from the Clinton Foundation. You cannot have a conversation with them. They're not capable of internal thought. A lot of them came from families who were given free land by De Valera in the 1930s, and they became suddenly a replacement for the Protestant ascendancy. And they became the bedrock of all the institutions in this country, from the GAA to the political parties and so on, and especially things like the civil service. And to this day, have always served in their family the state, regardless of what punitive measures they impose upon the citizens. It's all about this control method that goes on. And this goes across the entire establishment, not just in the politicals, the civil service, the bureaucrats, the health service, especially the mainstream media.
Life isn't just get a job, make some money, get a pension and die. Life is this great, incredible mystery. And there is this raging battle of good versus evil. It does exist. The fact that we cannot bear to think that there is evil in this world, even though we're confronted with it all the time. When we listen to the news, we know people do awful things. And if you do nothing about it, it just keeps going. And part of the awakening is like, you've got to do something about it. You cannot just let these people get away with what they're doing. I think we're getting this new hope now of people who say, I want to make the world a better place.
There's a lot of people in this country who have a spirit that's beyond manipulation. It's beyond the ability for these forces to control. I think men, if they're doing something good, if they have a mission, they have a spirit within them and they can't be stopped. But if you just throw them all in there, you stay in there now and watch Netflix, you watch a screen for the day, it'll do something to your head, like. It's not good for you. Whereas you give a man a mission, he'll feel good. He's doing something right.
It has to get really bad in order for it to get better, unfortunately. But by that stage, like, we could be a minority in our country. By the time people finally get it and they're walking around and they should be able to say it now. At some point, there will be a snap. There will be a breaking point because this can't go on. This is untenable. They cannot keep pushing the way they're doing and expect no backlash. And hopefully that comes peacefully. That's what everybody wants. At the end of the day, this is our country. And men fought for 800 years to free this country. Only for us to lose our cultural identity. You know, it's all about the next generation. It always has been. You know, even the men who went out and made that sacrifice on 1916 on Easter Monday, they weren't going to see the benefit of what happened. They knew they were going to their deaths. At that stage, there was a lot of comfortable people in Dublin and they weren't too happy with what happened. It's very, very similar to now. Very similar to now. In many ways, it's even more dangerous now because popular culture pulls down a stage set in front of people's eyes. As long as the football is on, as long as they can go on holiday to feel bob in their pocket. It's all designed to distract you, while piecemeal, bit by bit, they're taking your rights away, they're taking your country away, they're giving your country away. We've been deracinated in the space of 100 years, turned into basically economic units. People are only happy when there's a few bob in their pocket. They're not attached to the land, they don't have the love for the country. This is a spiritual attack, this is a psychological attack, you know. It's a cultural attack.